Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel Mercs Exotics. Today we have another really exciting video for you guys. We're going to be going over how to properly set up a leopard gecko tub or cage. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so first things first when it comes to housing your leopard gecko, and that is what you're going to use as its house. Really your only options here are going to be a tub or an aquarium type tank. And as far as what is better than the other, in my opinion, honestly, it doesn't matter. I feel like tanks are more for the visual, you know. If you want to have a really cool looking cage, then yeah, you want to use maybe an aquarium for your leopard gecko. However, if you're doing like a breeding setup, it's definitely more practical to use tubs because, you know, you can store them a lot easier, and as far as the life goes for your leopard gecko, it's really going to be the same. The one upside that I will say a tank has to a tub is that in an aquarium tank you can provide lighting and UVB, which for leopard geckos isn't necessarily necessary, but obviously does not hurt. So for sizing for an adult leopard gecko, as far as cage goes, you want at least a 10-gallon to 20-gallon cage or larger, and for a tub, you want at least a 28-gallon tub for your leopard gecko for an individual, or larger for a pair. Obviously, as you're choosing a tub, if you're trying to get as much space for your leopard gecko as possible, you want to get floor space, not height, as these guys. They will climb actually if you do have some height to your cage, but typically they are more terrestrial, and so they're going to stay on the ground. So you want as much floor space as possible for them. So the biggest thing for caring for your leopard geckos that you're going to need is a heat pad. You're going to want to attach that to the bottom, and this is how these guys are going to stay warm and digest their food and be strong and healthy. You want to make sure that it takes up a good amount of the floor space, not all of it though. That way your leopard geckos have plenty of room they can go around and stay nice and warm. So as you can see, I have a heat pad on this side, and this side there's no heat pad. So this is what is going to be called the hot side, and that's going to be the cool side. And you want to make sure there's enough space in your cage that you have that hot and cold side. That way your leopard gecko can move around and adjust their body temperature however they want to. Now if you're using a tub, you want to make sure that you can poke in a good amount of these ventilation holes. You want them to be pretty sizable so a good amount of air can go through, but not too big so the leopard gecko can get out. The easiest way I found to do this is to heat up a nail or something that has a pretty broad end to it, and then you're going to want to get that red hot and then push that into the plastic and create a pretty smooth hole that doesn't crack the plastic to the container. As you can see, I also put a whole bunch of holes in the lid to their tubs. Alright, now up next is going to be the substrate that you're going to use for these guys. I personally use paper towel. I think it works great. I think it's the easiest, it's the most convenient. As far as cleaning stuff up, it's the easiest there too. And as far as what's good for your leopard gecko, it is just as good as any other substrate you can use. Sometimes people also will use newspaper. That's also pretty cheap and convenient. However, I just don't think it looks as clean in an aquarium. And then obviously a reptile carpet, you can buy that, and that is going to make your cage look the most natural, as well as work just as well, in my opinion, as paper towel. In fact, I actually prefer using paper towel just because if there's any mess on the reptile carpet, it's much easier to rip off and throw away a piece of paper towel than it is to have to go in and clean one of those carpets. Alright, so up next are the hides. You're going to want to make sure that your leopard gecko at least has two good places to hide, one on the hot side and the other one on the cold side. For one of my leopard geckos, I use this hide here, this rock hide. He loves it. The other leopard gecko has a different hide. You can use homemade hides, you know, you don't have to go to the pet store and spend a lot of money on some fancy one. However, when it comes to the cool side hide, I prefer to always put a moist box in there. So for the female, since she's going to be laying eggs, I'll put in some eco earth. That way she can dig around, lay her eggs in that if she wants. And then also it provides the humidity for shedding. However, for the male, I have the same setup, except for I replace the eco earth for damp paper towels, which I fill up the container with. That way he can move around in there and cool off, as well as it helps his shedding. These moist hides are very important, as I've said, they'll help with the shedding for your leopard gecko, especially on the fingers. That can be a very crucial thing for leopard geckos, is that their shed can get stuck on their fingers, and it'll actually end up cutting off the circulation, and then pieces of their fingers will fall off because of that. So these moist boxes really help. Another big thing is a water dish. Some people that care for leopard geckos think that this is optional, and it is up for debate. technically is optional, as some people don't use them and have just healthy leopard geckos. However, I always keep a water dish in the cage. I see no downside to it. If a leopard gecko is really thirsty and needs some extra water, it's available and they can get it. And if a leopard gecko is fine and doesn't want water, then that's fine. They don't have to drink. They definitely do get hydration from the crickets and bugs that they eat, so that is not false. However, I just think that it's always smart to put some water in there, and it doesn't hurt anything. As far as food dish goes, there are plenty of little food dishes you can buy from Petco that keep the mealworms in, and don't let them out. However, sometimes I find that leopard geckos specifically will have a hard time finding them in there if they're not super used to those feeding dishes, since they kind of have the lip usually. So I actually use the tops to mealworm containers. The mealworms can crawl out of it, but as long as the leopard geckos are hungry and paying attention, if you put them in there, they'll eat them. And also a few lone mealworms crawling around the cage is never that big of a deal. And finally, it comes down to plants or decorations for your leopard gecko. There is an endless amount of things you can choose. You can do themed tanks, you can do a natural tank, you can do just the basic kind of breeder setup tank. The world is your oyster in this one. Obviously, other than these breeder leopard geckos, I also have my leopard geckos in the living room, who are in the big 40-gallon display cage. That's the complete opposite take as what we showed in this video. So, either way, you end up with happy, healthy leopard geckos. The ones out there are in a display cage that are more meant for, humans to be able to see and for it to look good for us. Whereas as far as the care needs for these guys, are met just the exact same in this type of setup as well. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this guy back in his cage. I'm going to clean out and set up the cage below it just the same way for the female. Thank you guys so much for watching. It truly means the world to me, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe for more, and if you want to hit that bell icon, you can be notified every time I put up a new video. Stay tuned for more. I have a million different video ideas. Thank you again for watching. Goodbye.